Hey guys, welcome back to Brothers Off Script. I'm Jerry.
I'm Ryan.
Today we're going to be talking about the Florida bridge collapse and how tragedy affects our lives in general.
And when we've tried to do something and failed at it ourselves, and maybe when we've had some success.
Stay tuned and we'll be right back.
And we're back. This is what's going on this week. We've got shootings, bridge collapses, just tumult in the White House. We've got people getting fired, people getting hired, people getting promoted. I've got reprimands going on at work. I've got personal stuff going on at home with trying to keep my kid alive. I mean, he basically is doing what kids do, trying to fly, and
without understanding gravity.
Few of us truly understand gravity, except for it affects us on a daily basis. And when things change, when things are not the way they seem, like if, say for instance, gravity failed one day, what would happen? Everybody, and no one will really think about this. So maybe some philosophers or some. I don't think a theologist is the right word, but someone would think about it and they'd say, what happens if gravity fails? Well, we all go flying into the sun or something like that. It's unlikely to happen, but if it did, what would you do? Well, nothing unless you're inside, in which case you might live for a little bit longer. But when the world's falling down around you, when there is nothing you can do, when people you know, people who know someone, which is typical of tragedy in this day and age, because we're all so connected with social media and just the news in general. You empathize with these people because the coverage is so in depth. In most cases, they dig into the backstory of someone who just died and tell you how they rescued a pit bull the weekend before, and now that
or the charity work they were involved in, or how many kids they had, or here's a picture of their family that's grieving for them, or here's a family member that's crying.
And it's terrible. It really is terrible that anything in this world could go so wrong with the technology that we have, with the ability to literally reach out and touch someone across the world, and you're not able to solve the problem. You have to wait for someone else to do it for you, and that, I think, because of how connected things are now, when something does go wrong, you feel even more helpless than if it had happened to you. Maybe you're trapped in a ravine somewhere with a boulder crushing your arm. I was thinking about 127 hours the other day. It's a crazy situation, but he had to dig himself out. Mm-hmm. He literally had to cut his own arm off to escape. And I thought about it, it's like, in this society, if you did the social experiment where you literally took someone and put their arm in a hole, okay, you just put their arm in a hole, put some straps on them, and you stick them in a room by themselves, and you say, okay, well, we're going to see how long you can last. Now, they're in no impending danger. They're not going to die. We'll make sure they don't die. We've got medical staff on the other side of the wall. But we're just going to put your arm on the other side of the wall, and you can't take your arm back for a couple hours. See how long people actually last before they literally start to freak out. And I did this. I thought about this experiment, and it's because you know that there's an escape, you would go into it very strong. You would automatically think, I could do it. I could last the 72 hours. I could last 5 days and they're no problem. I'd have to, or they probably wouldn't make me drink my own pee, but I could probably drink some water and, I could get by, or I could last until I was almost dehydrated and they'd have to pull me out because I would last to the very end. But the problem is that because you know there's an escape, you also know that there's someone that's going to rescue you immediately upon asking. And when that safety net exists, you're left with the idea that I'm making a choice to hurt myself. And why would I do that? That's dumb. I should just get out of this. This is dumb. I've wasted so much of my time. I've been here for it feels like forever, but it's probably 45 minutes or something at that point,
Mm-hmm.
not being able to pull your arm back. You're probably freaking out, and maybe you go an hour or maybe two, but I bet the majority of people wouldn't last more than an hour in there. With the option to escape, there is never going to be a desire or a need to really reach deep inside of yourself and say, could I cut my arm off to get out of this situation?
I'm kind of reminded, there was an episode of the Mythbusters where they tried the Chinese water torture test.
The drops.
And essentially, they had the difference between someone who was relaxed and comfortable. I think they had Adam sitting in a easy chair, you know, warm, and this water's just dripping on him, and he went hours, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was fine. And then they took the gal on there, and I can't remember what her name was.
Carrie or something.
Carrie, I think. And they strapped her down to this table, and they put this mask on her face that prevented her from moving her head from side to side.
Right.
And they have the EMT right there, and they have the staff, and they have the camera crew. And
they start dripping the water.
They start dripping the water. And she lasted, I think it was maybe 2.5 hours or something like that.
Yeah.
And they were asking her, you know, how are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And it got to a point for her where she was literally saying, like, I can't do this anymore. I need to be done. Like,
yeah,
she was having a panic and anxiety attack.
They did all kinds of experiments.
And I think with a lot of the tragedy that we face, you know, we can't see it coming.
No.
Right? We don't get the option to see, in some cases, like you and I were talking about, what if we lost someone that we love? What if we lost somebody that we care about? You know, and if it's a person who's older, maybe you've thought about it. Maybe you've tried to process that for yourself and imagine. Maybe if you have a child with a medical condition, or you have, like, maybe there's a part of you that's trying to process that. But for most of us, when we face tragedy, we don't have the time to react. Or even when we're empathizing with somebody, we don't have the time to react. And it's that shock that makes it feel so overwhelming, feel like we're trapped, feel like we don't have an escape from our emotions in that moment.
And with the 24-hour news coverage now, we've got nothing but whatever the worst thing that just happened is on the news. And also the last worst thing, and the last worst thing, and the last worst thing, because they have to fill it up. You can't talk about the same thing 15 minutes in a row. You have to break it up. And I was listening to the news the other day on the way to the gym, and then I was listening to the same exact news on my way to work 2 and 3 hours later. It was the same commentary, the same soundbite. Everything was the exact same, but it had happened, you know, to be at that end or the beginning of the next news cycle. And we're so inundated with all these things that there's no escape from it. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could go off grid, you can turn off Facebook, but you literally can't get away from the end of your favorite show on social media. If you watch a show and it's airing that night, but maybe it's date night. Maybe you want to go out and disconnect from the world for a minute. But the guy next to you at the other table will be like, oh, they just died. You know, like, oh, no, man. Spoilers. Like, it's terrible how connected we are when it comes to things like that. But it's also great that when we're so connected and bad things happen, that you can see the good a lot more quickly. You see more people reacting in positive manners with support and empathy that you wouldn't have seen otherwise. They talk about it often in the news, how if this had happened back then this would be the reaction. But I don't think anybody could really accurately tell what the reaction was, except for similar situations. The bridge collapse. We were just watching AVE on YouTube, and his explanation of a previous bridge collapse, you know, many, many, many years before that, because his explanation was bridges are so over-engineered that they're designed not to fail unless XXX happens before they actually will even go down. And the idea that you could prepare for every eventuality,
I don't think you can. I don't think you can.
But they design them that way.
Oh, I'm saying, like, in general, you're talking just for the bridges.
For the bridge, and it's his reference is that many, many years ago, someone else had done that, but they left the the checks and balances up to their buddy basically, and he didn't bother to go and do the actual checks, and so he left a situation available for failure, and when it did, 16 people died. And in this case, we've got 6, 8, 10 people dead or injured based on this bridge collapse. We have a ski lift incident. Apparently a ski lift is going reverse at 20 miles an hour, throwing people, breaking people, bouncing them all over the mountain, and they're out there to have a good time, and some bad stuff is happening. And the reaction of most of these people is to stand around and watch it happen. We've talked about don't take a selfie at a car wreck. But if there was anything, all I was saying while we were watching this video is, why isn't somebody hitting the e-stop? Yeah. At every gas station in the world, there's an e-stop. How many fail videos have you watched where somebody sets fire to a gas pump and everybody just runs every other direction? When there's a giant red button over there, run up and hit that button, and you can save lives possibly, save property, save yourself. And it's, what reaction do you have? What reaction am I going to have? What reaction are you going to have when this thing happens in our face?
How do we respond if somebody's hurt? Right?
Yeah.
If somebody has a heart attack, how do we respond if there's a car wreck?
Yeah.
How do we respond if someone that we care about gets hurt?
How do you respond when someone cuts you off on the highway? Do you immediately wish for them to catch a gust of wind and flip off the side of the highway and drive past them laughing? Is that your inner monologue? Because I've had that one before. I've hoped that a truck would tip over because it was dude's driving like a jerk and he should be out of my face. But when it finally happens, I think I would stop.
Yeah.
I think I would stop and try and help.
I think so. Looking at it from a perspective of the successes and the failures, like I think for me, the successes in tragedy situations, I've talked a few times about my family was in a car wreck while we lived in Colorado, and we were kind of stranded on the side of the road for a couple of hours. My wife and one of my daughters had to go to the emergency room, and I was moving car seats in a blizzard into a police car, and it was tragic. And then our friend had to drive up and get us, and then he got in a wreck on the way back, broke his car, and our car was almost totaled. I mean, so in that situation, I think the key point, if you want to teach your children or if you want to worry about yourself and how you're going to manage it, is staying calm, right? And understanding that you're trying to solve a problem and not allowing the emotional reaction to get to you. And I think the failure in my mind for myself has definitely been around the tragedy of relational losses, right? What I mean by that is the times where something's bad has happened to a friend or a relative or, a person that I know. And I think in a lot of cases, I kind of step back and say, I'm going to wait and see. Not when it's right in front of me, of course, but I'm talking, somebody a state away, somebody 3 states away, somebody you've had a friendship or relationship with. A lot of times I'll step back and wait and see. And I think I've tried to save myself from that emotional pain. And I haven't necessarily always been willing to kind of step up and say, let me try to help you. Let me try to go where your need is at. And so, for my kids, I really want to teach them to be empathetic and teach them to be calm, but I also kind of want to teach them to reach out.
Reaching out is great. I'd worry too much about unnecessary GoFundMe accounts when someone makes a bad mistake in their own personal life and then says,
"Don't do that, please."
I've just lost my job. I have 3 kids, and I got a car bill due, and
I need you guys to pay my bills.
I need about $17,000 to pay off my credit card debt. Okay, well, problem number 1 and 2 were where you lost your job. Okay, why did you lose your job? All right, well, I'm not going to blame you for being late to work 7 days in a row, but I'm going to go ahead and say that you shouldn't have made that mistake. Okay, you got 3 kids. Okay, where's the father? Well, there's 3 separate fathers. Okay, there's a lot of problems. We can get into it, but the $17,000 in credit card debt to pay for your kid's Christmas fund or whatever it is, like, we all make mistakes, but when the collapse comes, when it all gets too much, if you're buried, are you climbing out? Are you relying on other people to pull you out? If you could carve out a little airspace, maybe you could live a little bit longer in the hole, in the tunnel. there's people who survive avalanches. I think that just happened, right? We had six people dead in 2 avalanches recently.
Tragedy.
And it's a couple of people survived and a couple of people died. And it's ridiculous to think that, I guess, that tragedy won't strike you.
It will.
I mean, it will.
It's some way, shape, or form. It's a guarantee.
You're going to live so long. You're going to see some bad things. And when they happen, are you going to be prepared? Are you going to be willing to try and climb out of that hole? Are you going to be trying to save the people that are less fortunate than you? Are you going to be willing to get dirty to solve your problems?
Yeah.
So lots to think on. It wasn't supposed to go this way. It never is, but that's off script. So thanks for watching, guys.
We really appreciate it. Hit that like and subscribe button down below and click the bell and be alerted when we upload new videos.
See you next time.